Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Ending Physician Overwhelm. Today, we're talking about energy management. And I was coaching several people actually earlier today, one of my one-on-one clients, as well as my small group. And it came up multiple times, this discussion around energy management. And in particular, two people shared as their weekly wins that they had called out sick on the Friday before we were speaking. And that's such an odd thing for us to celebrate as a win, but here's where it comes from. And everyone who's listening who knows exactly what I'm talking about, I see you nodding along. You get it. We are trained to put ourselves last, always. We are trained to work through, push through, ignore our bodies, ignore anything that we're feeling or experiencing, sleep, hunger, emotions, all of those things in order to put patient care first. And that has its place, right? When we are in the middle of a code, we are not going to stop and have a snack. We are not going to take a break and use the bathroom because we've hit our break time. When we are doing an emergency surgery or seeing someone who's incredibly ill, we are not going to clock out, right? There is a time and a place for that kind of mentality. But unfortunately, it so often dribbles over into every other part of our life and needing to put other people first above all else. And that's especially true when we think about when we are sick, hurt, injured, exhausted, severely depressed or anxious, right? When we are experiencing something that really should pull us offline because we need to take care of our human bodies. So this was two women physicians who both identified that they were feeling sick enough to call out. And we celebrate that as a win because it was them trusting that they were able to identify that they were under the weather enough to not be able to do their jobs well. One in particular, upper respiratory infection symptoms, as well as the fatigue and symptoms that were going along with that. And she in particular thought, I don't want to get other people sick. And yes, I can wear a mask, but also there's this energy problem of not having the energy to do my work well. And what I loved about her particular story is that she is a site leader for her clinic, and she didn't want to set the example of coming to work sick. And how remarkable is that? Can you imagine if we were modeling for each other that we pause to take care of our bodies? And again, it stood out as such a thing to celebrate, and that leads us into our conversation about thinking, how do we manage our energy? So for the sake of the discussion, energy is, I'm just going to say it's exactly however you want to define it, but you can think of it as the amount of space between awake and functioning well and able to think clearly, and the opposite of that being really sleepy, tired, run down. It's hard to think, right? We just need to go to bed or take a break or whatever that looks like. And imagine that you've got this tank of energy. There's so many different visual examples we could think of, but if you literally want to think of a tank, like a drum, like a container, a vessel that has a certain amount of space right? And we can imagine this space where it's full and we can imagine a space where it's empty, right? Because we can add energy in through sleep, exercise, good nutrition, caffeine. Certainly, there's a lot of unhealthy things that we could do to pour some energy in. But rest and recuperation and exercise and self care and connection and play, those are all things that help to fill up our energy stores. What are the things that drain us, right? Just going through the day, right? Physical and emotional exertion, right? Decision making, stress. When you're caring for other human bodies, whether that's at work or at home or fur babies, there are things that drain our tank as well. And just the simple passage of time drains the tank, right? We wake up in the morning, ideally with a full tank. We get to the end of our day, the tank is partially empty. And you can break that down on a chemical level, down into adenosine buildup and all that complex sort of sleep physiology, but just the progress of time drains the tank, right? We need to sleep to recharge our batteries. So, what I want to highlight here, though, and really dig into today is that energy management is something that is your responsibility. And we often don't really feel like it is, but it really needs to be something that you manage. And it changes over time. It changes because you change with age. It changes because you've got different responsibilities in your life at different times. Your energy as a resident, let's say a resident who does not have a partner, does not have children, does not have aging parents, and is 27, is different from your energy when you are 35 and you've got 3 kids and your parents are in their 70s, is different from when you are 58 and perhaps you are an empty nester, and perhaps parents are older or sicker, or maybe they're not here anymore. Your energy at all of these stages of time is different. And yes, there are things that we can do to influence that, positive and negative, but your energy, what is available, how big the tank is, the things that fill it up, the things that drain it are going to be different. Big medicine would like to pretend that we are all the same, that we should be all the same, that there is one size of tank that is equipped, that all physicians are equipped with. We have one size of tank that should survive and surmise whatever. I'm tripping over my words a little bit here, but that should be sufficient for everyone. And the thing is that we don't all have a tank that size. Bigger or smaller, it's going to change over time, as I said. It is not one thing. And no one can see how big or small or empty or full your tank is. Sure, we could argue that people could tell if you're bouncing off the walls with energy or substances. And people can tell if you are so low in the tank that you are just dragging, that you're struggling to stay awake, right? We could argue that people can see that or detect that in some way. But many of us are very good at masking so many of our human needs that, let's just say, people don't have any idea of how big or small your energy storage is. They don't know what things are filling you up and what things are draining you. I think for a lot of us, we like to imagine that other people can see where our energy reserves are at. They can see that we aren't starting the day with a full tank. They could see how much we are being drained, especially when we're repeatedly told no, when we're repeatedly told that we don't have the support that we are supposed to have, when we are told that we need to work extra people in, that we don't have the resources. No, 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 right? That things are going to be getting tighter. That, we're the ones who have to solve the problem of the angry patient in the waiting room. There are so many things that can drain our energy, and we just imagine that other people can see it, but other people cannot see the energy that you do or don't have. They can't see how big the tank is. They can't see how big the spigot is that's draining, right? And it is our responsibility to take over the management of our energy if we are going to be living a good life, if we are going to be able to thrive, if we are going to be able to be happy and balanced, we will need to manage that energy tank and we will need to be mindful about it. So let's chat a little bit. And I want you to think for yourself, what is my energy tank looking like these days? What have I got going on in my life? How am I physically doing in terms of my health? Am I getting sleep? Am I up all night with small children or animals or elderly parents? Am I pregnant or have chronic pain or some other chronic condition that is draining energy? What are those things like right now in my life? When you can be really clear about what stage you're in and how big your tank is, then you're able to make some decisions, right? And start to manage the energy better. So, one of my clients shared with me that she is currently pregnant and she also has a toddler. There is less energy in our bodies during pregnancy because we are literally growing a human. And it's important that we recognize that. I don't think I was ever as tired as in the first trimesters of my pregnancies. There is a real drain that our hormones cause, which, from an evolutionary perspective, is designed to try and keep us safe, to try and keep us from taking big risks, to get us to rest, right? To conserve that energy and direct it towards safely procreating. That is very real, and not everyone may experience that during a pregnancy. Not everyone may choose to be pregnant. Not everyone, unfortunately, will be able to stay pregnant. There are lots of ways that that looks, but that is a very real circumstance that people encounter. And when you are in that, you may feel a very real drain that you may not be able to override. Now, we could say perhaps that there is a difference between that and someone who, let's say, is not exercising, not getting themselves to bed, not giving themselves healthy food and fuel for their bodies. But it really doesn't matter too much. We don't need to get into the weeds about the value judgment that's there. We just need to recognize that the energy is different if we are in a state like that, or if we are not doing a good job of managing our energy, right? It is important that we recognize that and that we decide how we are going to respond when we are, oh, excuse me. Did I say that I'm getting over a cold? I don't know if I did, but I'm getting over a cold, friends. And my energy is good at this point, but I've still got this hoarse voice and drippy nose. So pardon me. But when we are in certain stages of life, certain stages of responsibility, our energy levels are going to be different. And again, no one can see exactly how big a tank you have, but knowing for yourself, you know what? I don't have a lot of extra energy to give. My energy is low right now because of whatever circumstance I'm in. I've known several physicians who have, actually, I know, unfortunately, a lot of physicians who've experienced breast cancer. And although I have this unrealistic expectation that we should just be given, a whole year off when that happens to us, that's not actually what happens. Many physicians are working through their cancer diagnoses, and yes, they take time, to go and have surgery or chemo or radiation treatments, but a lot of them are working through it. So your energy to be able to manage your clinical work is different when you are experiencing a cancer. We need to acknowledge that. And unfortunately, our healthcare systems, again, they want to paint us with a broad brush and say, no, no, everybody's energy should be the same. It is not the same. It is not the same, my friends. And if you are able to recognize that you are in a place where you have pretty low energy stores, you're going to need to use that as a frame of reference in order to make decisions and to get out of this values judgment about this. So, how does this show up? So, in the examples that I shared, right, where one of my clients is a busy physician and pregnant and has a toddler, that is a lot of things to manage. And so, when she became sick, she was going to have that much less energy. And, could she try pushing through? She could try pushing through. And many of us have done that. We've lived that experience for a very long time of pushing ourselves harder and harder and harder. But when we are sick, when we are tired, when our tank is smaller, it doesn't take as much to really push us over the edge. And so making the decision, you know what? I'm going to need to call out sick today because I cannot manage. That is an important judgment, and it's a real successful tuning in to where is my energy at and what am I going to be able to do. Again, we have martyrized this pushing through, but if we really step back and think about it, our highly clinical cognitive work, or if we're a proceduralist, right, and we need to be really on, if we do not take those breaks, if we do not decide to sit out when we absolutely do not have the energy to be able to manage it, and again, we're not in the middle of a surgery, right? But this is earlier than that. This is before we've gone into work. The ability to say, I don't have the energy to go to work, to be able to do a good job, to be able to get through what I anticipate is on my plate. That is an important decision for someone to make. And it's often something that my clients and certainly I have struggled with is being able to decide, ooh, am I sick enough to call out sick? Because most of us have just internalized that we really need to be nearly dead before we call out sick. Now, I'm not going to minimize that when physicians and healthcare providers call out sick, that it's not stress on the team. It is stress on the team. It is. Patients need to be rescheduled. Um, staff have extra work to do to try and figure out where to put people. Those things are real. And again, that pressure has kept people working at times when they really should not be working. But when we are not choosing to take care of ourselves and we're making that choice over and over again that we are not going to take care of ourselves, that is a completely unsustainable system, right? And it also perpetuates this idea in medicine that we don't take care of ourselves, we don't practice what we preach. It gives the system permission to continue to not be resourced in such a way to acknowledge that humans doing the work of healthcare have human needs as well. How many of us work in environments that are not staffed to anticipate staff calling out sick, staff going on leave, staff quitting, surges of patients? there is a real short-sightedness, and I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not easy to choose to overstaff in order to accommodate those kinds of leaves and not knowing exactly when things are going to happen or where. There is an art to that, and I don't pretend to know the answer. But when we are basically chronically running on the thinnest of margins, we are not prepared for the times when people do call out sick. We're not prepared to be understaffed, and it causes real harm and chaos. It causes so much stress on the humans who are there in the rooms taking care of patients, understaffed, under-resourced, and pushing themselves to the brink. And that makes everybody sick and unhealthy and unhappy, right? That is a very real contributor to burnout. And for someone to be able to recognize, yes, I know that is a hardship for my team, but I do not have the energy and the strength to be able to go in and take care of patients and do a good job. That is something that we need to celebrate, and we need to say, good for you, because you are part of the change. You are part of changing the culture that we push and hustle and serve others above all else. That is an unsustainable system. We can't continue to do that. Now, on the flip side, am I advocating that you take a day off like whenever and just randomly and say, oh, I don't feel like going into work today? No, I'm not. And you know you don't do that, and I know that you don't do that, and I know that I don't do that, right? That is not what we're talking about, but that is not the actual problem. The problem is not taking time for yourself when your energy is depleted, when you are sick, let alone, let's just say, not talking about getting other people sick, but let's just say from an energy perspective. So if you are sick and you're exhausted, and maybe you're febrile, right? And you choose to go into work in a non-critical emergency situation, you are perpetuating a broken system, and you are perpetuating the belief that that is what you owe to other people. It is not healthy, but it is hard. It is challenging to, especially the way that the culture of medicine is, to be able to say, you know what, I need to actually stay home and rest. I need to actually stay home and take care of myself. And again, let's put aside the public health element of working while you are sick. Just pausing to reflect on the physician who is out there who was working while having measles. That is a whole nother ball of wax. I'm not going to talk any more about that, but I saw that on my feed. That is perhaps the worst and most dangerous example I can think of, but that is not what we are talking about. But I also want to highlight the responsibility piece here. And this, I feel, has been missing from the conversation, which is, again, no one else can see what energy you do and don't have, how big your energy tank is. And again, it is more easy and more convenient for the big healthcare system to assume that everyone has the same size tank, that everybody comes in with their tank full and leaves their, tank partially drained, but, ready to be filled up the next day, right? That we are just easily able to manage our energy, and that we have enough energy to be able to manage anything that they throw at us, no matter what. Sure, double books, great, no problem. Oh, everyone else called out sick and you're now covering for everyone? Great, no problem. Yeah, patients, calling and demanding to be seen today. Yeah, no problem, right? We know that that kind of situation happens all the time, and it is done with very little reference to what is going on for us as individuals, right? The person who gets double booked on a day that they needed to leave, not early, but they needed to leave on time, and no one checked with them to be able to see if they could add somebody on, and adding somebody on was going to push them to not be able to leave on time. But no one thought about it. No one thought about that physician as a human with a life outside, and they might need to leave work on time. How shocking, right? These kinds of situations are very real. And what I want to highlight here is that it is your job. That's a different example, but it is your job to be able to manage your energy level and to be able to set some boundaries for yourself and for other people. And this is really important because we would like to abdicate that. We would like to have other people be in charge, not really like, but we would prefer to not have to stand up for ourselves, to set boundaries because that's uncomfortable work. We would prefer to have everybody be able to see how much energy we do or don't have and to be able to make appropriate judgments about what we can and can't do. And I'm not going to say that this never happens, right? I'm not going to say that your staff can't tell perhaps when you're dragging, but I think there's so much disconnection in most of our healthcare teams at this time that people are not doing that active management. The people at the front desk don't know that you're getting hammered at the back or that you're really struggling or that you need to get out on time to get to some event later in the day or because you're taking care of your sick mom. They don't know that. And so they are not going to be protecting your schedule. They're going to be doing business as usual, which again is usually very unconnected to what is okay and not okay for you. You are going to need to be able to assess where your energy is at this stage in your life and to be able to assess it on a given day and be able to know what is and isn't okay. So perhaps you, generally speaking, are okay if they add a walk-in to your schedule, but you have a particular day where you do need to leave on time. You do not feel well. You have something going on that you need to be able to say, no, I can't do that. Certainly, it's going to work best, right, if it's proactive. Hey, I know that we normally take a walk-in. I know that we normally take a double book. I'm not going to be able to do that today. There may be some points in your career where you decide, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to willingly take an extra patient because I know what it takes for me to be able to see a patient, right? The actual expenditure of energy during a patient encounter, right? Because also, no one knows that. Time is the thing that they know or don't know, although that's another area, right, where we're all painted with the same brush, right? Oh, yep, all our appointments are 20 minutes, all our appointments are 10 or 15 minutes, whatever that looks like. Patients don't always fit neatly into that box, and we as physicians don't always fit into that box, right? You know that there are people who can see a patient in 5 minutes, be in and out of that room, no matter how sick they are. And that's them. But you know you, and you know how you and your brain works and what you do and don't need. And it's not to say that you couldn't, I don't know, try and make some changes perhaps to work differently in order to see someone more quickly. But you know the energy that it takes for you on a given day to see, whatever it is that you see in the clinic or in the hospital, and to be able to assess whether or not you have extra capacity to do more or to not do more. Some of my clients are in a situation where they are so chronically understaffed that they don't have anyone helping them ever. They're supposed to have an MA, they're supposed to have a certain, amount of RN support, and they just chronically don't have that. They are needing to do more for each patient because they do not have the support. So when they don't have the support over and over again, and they're expected to also take on extra patients, just like everybody else, even though maybe everybody else has some support or, it's all over the map. There is a difference for each of us in how much energy we have, how much energy it takes us to see a patient or evaluate a certain condition. That is different for all of us because we are individuals, we are humans, we are complex and messy creatures. The point here is that you will need to be the one who stands up for yourself and makes decisions. And some of the time, you're going to make the decision, I can't do that. That what you are being asked to do is not going to work. And I'm thinking big picture when I say that. A big picture, I might decide, you know what? The way I work, the way I take care of patients, the way I want to take care of patients is not seeing a patient every 15 minutes. It's not that high turnover, um, barely enough time to get in and get out. And others of you are going to like that, are going to like, quick appointments. The point is we are all different. And if you're constantly being told to do more, do more, do more, do more, and it does not match your energy, it does not match what you put in, it does not match what you're able to sustain, something has to change. Sometimes that's going to be this place is not a good fit for me. Sometimes, of course, it's going to be, you know what? I like this. I want to be able to do this better. I'm going to work on this, this, and this, right? I'm going to work on maybe some clinical efficiency. I'm going to work on maybe getting an AI scribe. I'm going to work on exercising before I go to work because that's going to help my energy management. And then I'm going to be able to do this in this place and that will work better for me. That's possible, right? But some of the time, we know from lived experience that that is not how we want to do what we want to do. Sometimes we're going to need to make a decision. You know what? I have asked for support. I have asked for help. This is the way that my patients want me to take care of them. This is the way that things were done, perhaps, or the way that they work well for me. And I'm going to need to find a different situation. It takes a deep understanding of who you are, what you need, where you're at in your life, and a true belief that what you want and the way that you want to take care of people is valuable and has meaning, and that this setting might not be the right setting for you. When I think about all of the physicians I know, and I know a lot of physicians at this point who have started their own practices in all different stripes, insurance, not insurance, direct primary and specialty care, all sorts of different models. And I'll tell you that by and large, people have chosen to do this so that they can practice medicine in the way that they want to practice medicine, to be able to match their energy to it. And I'm not going to say that that always comes automatically or easily. It takes some adjustment, right? But to be able to trust that the way that they want to take care of patients matters and is valuable, and that there's a place for it, and that maybe that place is something they're going to create. It's really important that we internalize the belief that who I am and what I do matters. It matters and it makes a difference. And I'm going to figure out a way that I can do this and manage my energy in a sustainable way, that it may flex over time because that's just life, right? We have more and less energy at different points in our life. And that deep, deep trust, who I am and what I do matters. It's really important that we have these conversations, that we think about who we are, what we need, what we bring, what we have to give, and really put all the pieces together. And it's not to say that you're not going to have days or weeks or months where things are easy. Of course, you're going to have times that are easier and harder than others. If you are experiencing a physical or a mental health challenge, if you are caring for someone who is sick or injured, if you are going through a relationship change, good or bad, there are so many things that will happen to you in your life that are going to affect your energy. That's just normal. Being able to figure out, do I need to make a difference in how I'm filling up my energy tank or the way that I'm working so I don't get so drained? Do I need to set boundaries? Do I need to do some of that mindset work? Or if I've done those things, or I can really recognize that I am just not a good fit and they are not a good fit for me, do I need to change the circumstances in which I'm working? Do I need to set different boundaries? What is it that I need in order to be able to be the steward, to be responsible for my energy levels, to accept that no one can do that for me, that no one can see how much energy I do or don't have, that it's going to change over time, but I am not broken or wrong for having fluctuations in the amount of energy that I have in a given day to be able to do the important work that I do taking care of patients, that I am a human. I'm a human with all the warts and foibles, and it is okay for me to choose to do things differently. So it was a little bit rambling, but I hope that you see the through line, the thread here, that we are all human, that who you are matters, and doing this work helps to bring us into better alignment and create sustainable pathways for ourselves that allow us to continue to practice medicine, that take care of the needs of our patients as well as ourselves, because that doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. I believe that there is a better way. And, I say that as someone who is working in an insurance-based practice. There's ways to do this in all different directions, my friends. And until we are willing to step up and really hold those truths, right? To hold it true that who I am matters, what I do matters. We're going to continue to struggle with burnout. You will need to be the active steward of your own energy. And I hope that you'll take that challenge on. All right, my friends, that is what I have for you today. Thank you as always for listening. And until next week, take care. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.